Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. It's Friday, and you know what that means.
Front Office Friday!
Let's go. There it is. The yell kicking off Front Office Friday. We're so happy to have you guys joining us as we ring in the weekend. It's coming. The weekend is here. We're going to talk some NBA basketball today. So we'll be taking your questions and comments coming in from the YouTube channel. Keith, finally, we didn't get to do a show yesterday. Our schedules didn't align. I feel like we have so much that we have to get through on this Front Office Friday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna get to questions and everything, but we got a lot of news, including a little bit of breaking news, and it's not good news either. Shams Charania reporting Darius Garland of the Cleveland Cavaliers suffered a fractured jaw last night in the game against the Celtics and will miss several weeks. So it's that's just bad news all around for the Cavs and for Darius Garland. He did come back to play in that game. He went out, he ran into Kristaps Porzingis at the start of the second half, left the floor immediately, and you could see him like spitting out blood. Then went to the back, came back in and played and finished out the game. And then apparently today, it's a tough, must have popped up that it came up. So just brutal stuff for him and the Cavs. And the Cavs are just having that year where they just can't get everybody healthy at the same time.
Yeah, it seems like everybody's getting, as Mr. Classic mentions in our chat, so many facial fractures. Yeah, we've had so many around the NBA. It's been crazy, but broken jaw, that's not a basketball injury that you hear of very often. We hear sprained ankles and things like, or if it's something on the face, it's usually a broken nose, and then you wear the mask like Rui Hachimura is right now. But a broken jaw, I can't even think of the last time I heard of a broken jaw in the NBA.
Yeah, me either. It's been a while, and probably not out of anything that just happens, right? It probably was a punch or something like that last time around. So yeah, not good news at all that he's going to be out for a while.
All right, so Keith, today, December 15th, is unofficially the start of trade season in the NBA. We've got all the guys, or most of the guys who signed contracts this past summer are now trade eligible. That opens up the majority of the league to trades.
8 players today became trade eligible.
How many?
80.
80. Okay. Yep. 80 players. So that's a lot. It's a lot of players that are now on the trade market. However, you and I have both been pretty conservative with this and saying that doesn't necessarily mean that the floodgates open and we should expect a flurry of activity. Typically, it's more mid-January when this stuff really gets going. Some of that is the holidays. Some of that is teams are still trying to figure out exactly what they are and what it is they need, what direction they want to go. So while this is exciting and it means there's more realistic trade possibilities and there's going to be plenty of trade rumors and things like that to get into, if you're expecting a bunch of deals to go down right now or even in the month of December, more often than not in the NBA, you'll wind up being a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say each of the last 5 seasons has seen an early trade happen. Now, one of these could be classified as a real blockbuster trade. That was the James Harden trade to the Brooklyn Nets. That trade happened, if we remember, that happened on January 16th, but that was an adjusted calendar because of the COVID years.
Right.
That was a trade that kind of came in pretty early on in the season. The other one, so last year, very minor, Boston Celtics and San Antonio Spurs. It was a salary dump of Noah Vonleh into the Spurs cap space. The year before that, the Lakers traded Rajon Rondo to the Cleveland Cavaliers when they needed a point guard. Again, at that point in Rondo's career, very minor trade. Then we had the Harden trade. The year before that, somewhat big-ish trade. Jordan Clarkson traded from Cleveland to Utah. And then in 2018, Trevor Ariza was traded from the Phoenix Suns to the Washington Wizards in a deal that sent Kelly Oubre and Austin Rivers to the Suns. So kind of 2 good-sized trades there, 1 blockbuster, and then 2 very minor trades.
But even those ones you're talking about, some are January by the time you're not. There's not like December trades are more the kind of minor in the margins, like the Rondo trade, things like that. That we'll see going down in December.
Yes, very usually. The Ariza one and the Clarkson ones, though, Ariza one happened a couple days into trade season, unofficially opening. That was a December 17th trade. That one, though, was very much a expected because Ariza had kind of been, he wanted out of Washington very much. So that's where that one kind of came out of. And then the Clarkson one happened on December 23rd. So again, a semi early trade, but nothing, really incredible, out of those trades. So I don't expect anything major, probably for at a minimum another month, if not a month and a half until we're at the beginning of February.
All right, so let's get into. There was some news that came, I believe it was yesterday. Mark Stein had a lot out about the Jazz being, we've talked a lot about the Raptors and them being the Grinches of the NBA trade market over the last few years. We've talked a lot about the Chicago Bulls, of course. The spotlight has primarily been on them and Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Alex Caruso, and more that could be moved on their roster. Now the Utah Jazz popping up as a potential seller here on the market. What do you think about their guys? I've already got people asking questions about Lauri Markkanen here in the chat.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen some of the reaction to that piece, and then Jake Fisher also followed up with thing about the Jazz as well, and about the Markkanen news that the Jazz could listen. I think what's interesting is some of the reaction is, well, why would Danny Ainge ever do that? That's his all-star. He's not going to make a trade like that. That is a complete misread of what Danny Ainge does. Danny Ainge, if he doesn't believe that player will be a part of what can be a championship contender, he's going to move that player if he finds the right deal. There are no sacred cows in his world. There's no one he's going to absolutely have to, stay attached to. I know
he traded Isaiah Thomas.
He did. And he gets this rep of, they were always close, and they considered doing a trade for Paul George and Jimmy Butler and insert superstar X here. But that's probably kind of, some truth there of like, how close were you really? But he will trade anybody if he doesn't believe that those guys should be a part of things. So yeah, one of the other pieces that dropped in that whole thing is from Mark Stein. They're already open to moving on from John Collins. That shows we took him in, right? I know we're right back on that world. The whole history of our show has been John Collins is on the trade market. But yeah,
the John Collins trade podcast. We're just going to rename it at this point.
Yeah, it might as well be. And every day we'll just come up with a new John Collins trade rumor. So yeah, so we're in a spot where Markkanen, John Collins, basically anybody who's not on a rookie deal, they are talking about moving them. We did talk briefly, just because I'm seeing in the chat. We did talk about Darius Garland already. That was one of the first things we talked about because they came out right in the beginning. I don't know where 7 weeks is coming from. I haven't seen that. I've just seen several weeks.
Maybe he just misread several and
could be a text type thing too, or something. I don't know. Who knows?
But
yeah, so it talks about Darius Garland. We'll see. Cavs super light on point guard depth because Ricky Rubio is not back and hasn't been back. That could move the Cavs into, much like the Rondo trade was an early trade. Maybe they make a move for a point guard from somebody just to kind of fill out the rotation a little bit there. Craig Porter Jr. has played really well for them, but he's a two-way player. So we'll kind of see what that looks like with him the rest of the way.
You mentioned the Rondo trade. It's maybe a little bit ironic, but the Cavs are kind of right back in that situation where they could really use a point guard. Is there anybody on the market that jumps out as a player that maybe you wouldn't have to break the bank to get, but at least could keep the Cavs afloat? Because they've been struggling, and I don't know how this looks. I mean, I guess you just put the ball more in Donovan Mitchell's hands, I suppose, but is there a inexpensive move they could make out there to go land a serviceable point guard?
Yeah, I wonder if they could go after someone like a Jordan McLaughlin from Minnesota. Not a very big contract. I think you're probably going to hear some level of connection to maybe a guy like TJ McConnell.
Yeah.
As well, but Indiana's probably going to be hard pressed to move on from McConnell. It's not exactly a great fit, but maybe Patty Mills, a guy like Alec Burks from the Pistons. Maybe he's not healthy right now, but maybe Monte Morris could be a guy you could see. Maybe they try to see if Washington will move early on a guy like Tyus Jones or DeLon Wright. DeLon Wright also not healthy at the moment, so we'd have to see what it looks like with him coming back. Utah has some extra guards, but they've got some guys who are injured right now. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely options out there for get by point guard for the next several weeks, that they could definitely get in on, I would think. Just is that the direction they want to go? And some of those are going to cost way more than some others.
Yeah. Yeah. Tyus Jones in particular, I think his market is going to be interesting to follow. The Wizards, I mean, obviously they've been struggling, but that's a guy who could draw a decent amount of attention, particularly because the Grizzlies played so well when Tyus Jones was running the show there. What's funny?
Trevor, can we bring up Bernie's comment? He says, Keith loved the hat. I want to explain it.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I don't see I'm missing. Oh, there it is. What team is that? There it is. Got it. Okay, go for it.
This is the Foundation Academy Lions. This is my daughter's school team. And why I want to explain it is they had an undefeated middle school soccer season this year. They went 10-0-1, one tie, which was 0-0. My daughter is a goalkeeper. She only allowed 2 goals all season in 11 games, 9 clean sheets, and one was a own goal in the final game yesterday. But they ended up winning 2-1. So an unbelievable season for them. Couldn't be more proud. And as an 8th grader, she is now joining her school's varsity team for the remainder of the varsity season. So we are incredibly proud of her and everything with that. So I appreciate Bernie asking about the hat. But yeah, Foundation Academy Lions here in Central Florida.
Living in victory, just celebrating that win and moving on up. So exciting stuff there. And
so fired up. Yeah, man. That win yesterday was like one of the coolest things, and they were so happy and excited and all that stuff. So
was it like an intense? It sounds like they've been in a lot of blowouts. Was that one competitive?
Yeah, it was. It was actually a really good game. They had more chances, but it's funny, just as an aside, no one really cares about this except for you and I, but a girl she plays club soccer with was on the other school's team, and so she knew she has a really good shot. She's a lefty and she can really hook the ball, and Bella played her perfectly. Bella's our daughter. Played her perfectly on 2 free kicks and saved them both, and then on a corner she was able to get up and punch it up and over the goal for a save. So super excited about that. So yeah, it was it was a very good, competitive, close game, hard fought between the 2 best teams in the league, and they came out on top. So super excited.
Those ones are tricky when you're bending a ball in towards the goal and you've got bodies in front in the box. Those are very tough to deal with. All right,
definitely.
Let's go. 3 Theory said, "Silly me trying to get one up on you guys about the news. You already covered it. This is why you guys are top tier. Keep up the great content. Thanks, 3 Theory. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it, man. All right. So what else do we look at here on the trade market? We've got there's the Utah Jazz, of course. I've seen some of the stuff going around about OG Anunoby, about Pascal Siakam, maybe the Kings being interested there. Keegan Murray, should the Kings make a move like that? Move off of Keegan Murray in order to add a kind of win now piece?
Yeah, I don't think I would I'd try to everything I could to keep Keegan Murray out of a trade like that if I was the Kings. But I am also very high on Keegan Murray. Full disclosure, up until about 2 weeks to go ahead of that draft, Keegan Murray was my top guy on the draft board. That's obviously he's not at the level of Banchero or Holmgren, but I like him a lot. And I thought, he was somebody I was super excited about coming in. So I was all kinds of fired up with that. So yeah, so we'll kind of see where that goes. But yeah, but if you could make the deal with draft picks or other stuff, yeah, I'd be all about it. I'd be all about jumping in on OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam for the Kings, because I think they would definitely help them.
Yeah, I mean, these are guys that could help a lot of teams. I'm really curious to see what the what the ultimate package would look like for a guy like OG, for the Raptors infamously asking for like 3 first-round picks and all that. If this is finally the year that the Raptors decide to make a deal, I'm going to be real curious to see what they actually get from these guys that they waited for so long on.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, and that was one of the things that was, I believe this was Jake Fisher had this, was that teams feel like there is more pressure on the Raptors to not risk just watching Siakam and or Anunoby walk. Gary Trent Jr. was also mentioned in that kind of category of all guys who could be, they could all be guys who are potential free agents this summer. So it turned into, if you watch them walk away again, now you're down to, all right, what are we doing here? It's we're into a spot where Kyle Lowry, that ended up being a sign and trade. But you lost Kyle Lowry, you lost Fred VanVleet. We got to make this stuff work out.
All right, let's get into some of our questions and comments. And I agree with you 100%. We need to have Luca come on sooner rather than later to talk a little bit about the Raptors side of things. You guys should check out Raptors Nation's YouTube channel. They do a fantastic job. Let's see what we can find here in the chat. I've got a lot of people asking about DeMar DeRozan. I from what we've heard from the Bulls side, it's that the Bulls would like to move Zach LaVine and have enough time before the trade deadline to see what everything looks like after moving Zach LaVine with whatever pieces they get from him, and then figure out what the next course of action is for Caruso, for DeRozan. Now, they're very resistant to trading Caruso. That's the news that's been out there. That's also what I would be putting out there if I was the Bulls. DeRozan, any of these other guys, these veterans that they've got, they want to see where everything falls after a Zach LaVine trade and then make a decision from there. So by that timeline, that would suggest that within the next few weeks, they'd probably want to try to make a Zach LaVine. We're talking early to mid-January. They'd look to get something done with him and then see what their team looks like and then make a decision from there on everybody else.
Yeah, my guess is they would like to do a LaVine trade by the latest within a day or two of the January 15th restrictions lifting. So if you were here at the beginning of the show, we talked about how 80 of the free agents who signed this summer became trade eligible today, the unofficial start of trade season in the NBA. There is an additional 28 players who will become trade eligible by January 15th. So those are guys who either signed extensions that then will free up their restriction, or they signed much, much later in the process. Some of these guys were August and September signings. And then you also have the handful of guys who re-signed with their team and got a big enough raise that it triggers the trade restriction until January 15th. Two notable examples that we talk about all the time there, Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, but also like Herb Jones is in that boat. There's several players in that situation of that 28. So my guess is that will be the spot where the Bulls will be targeting right around there, because that gives them about 3 weeks worth of games, which that's about 10, 12 games or so, to then look at, or what do we look like now? With whatever we got back, is this enough to feel good? If not for this season, but going into next summer, and maybe re-signing DeMar DeRozan, or is this all falling apart and it's time to move DeRozan and Caruso and see if we can find a trade for Vucevic and really just start this thing in a different direction?
Now, at the same time, we've continued to hear there's no market for Zach LaVine. Now, part of he's hurt right now.
Yeah.
Like he's not. I don't know that he's going to play in December now. I don't know that he's going to play before the end of the month.
Yeah.
So that's going to hinder his trade market as well. So that means that the window, Keith, for Zach LaVine to get back out on the floor and to prove and everybody see, okay, he's healthy, he can play basketball, and the Bulls to make a trade, that window feels pretty small in terms of actual, actually pulling it off and still having time to evaluate the roster before the trade deadline.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's two things with Zach LaVine, right? Teams don't need to see Zach LaVine play to feel good about Zach LaVine as a player. Everybody knows what he is as a player at this point. What you need to see is that he's back on the court and he looks good, or you need to, quote unquote, get your hands on him, meaning your medical team can have a look at him to see, or whatever's going on with this foot thing, is this a problem now? Or here comes Tatum checking in and saying hello. Or is this a problem long term? Is this going to be something that he's going to play a week and then he's going to be out for a week or whatever it is? So that's the things that are going to kind of hamper a little bit of that. And the Bulls are going to be reluctant to say, sure, you could do your own exams and all these things. That could also be why, though, maybe a team says, hey, we need to make a little bit of an earlier trade than a trade right now, because if we wait, we may not be in a spot where we can we don't want to be in a spot where new team gets him and then the team says, we don't like the way the foot looks, and then they not veto, but they basically go back and cancel the trade because of health reasons. So there's a lot of stuff in play here. So we'll see what that all looks like.
Yeah. It's going to be certainly something to watch. That's the biggest name out there on the trade market right now. It's Zach LaVine. And again, the Bulls' window to move him based on their own timeline. Obviously, they have all the way until February 8th, but based on what their own goals are, could be pretty small, especially when you're adding in that health factor. And again, he's got, I believe, it's foot swelling, which, I mean,
inflammation in his right foot.
Who's to say he doesn't, he's healthy for a week and then it comes back, and that's what teams have got to be careful with. That's what teams have got to be careful with. Somebody said trade for Jordan Poole. I don't know what his market looks like right now.
Not any good.
Not good.
It's going to be that's going to be the Wizards. They're going to ride that thing out, see if they can get him back and get him into a place where he starts playing better, and then maybe they can make a move with him down the line as like neutral value or something along those lines. Because right now nobody's giving anything of value for Jordan Poole.
No.
Once a favorite of this show.
That's right. Well, we called that was a while ago, but we said Jordan Poole was going to be the contender for Sixth Man of the Year when he was with the Warriors and all of that. But I think he's just bit off a bit more than he could chew here.
Yes. He may also be the worst off-ball defender I've ever seen in my life. Zach Lowe's 10 Things column this week on ESPN highlighted that, or low-lighted it, or whatever we call it. It's certainly not highlights. It was Jordan Poole getting back cut repeatedly from guys out of the corner.
That's something that maybe Zach needs to run. Maybe Zach needs to run with that and give you credit. Low lights, because not only does it works both ways for his name and for the players themselves. I guess it's overly negative for him, but still, you could highlight the low lights around the league.
Yeah, you could.
It's a good segment.
Could do that. Yeah, that would be a thing.
John Drake, thoughts on Miles Bridges to the Lakers? I don't know what they're going to do with Miles Bridges. Where are the Hornets even at with him at this point?
Yeah, so I wrote for Spot Track. It posted yesterday, but it's up today. I've retweeted it today, and you can go find that there. I'll also drop a link to the column in the YouTube chat. It is I wrote basically, here's some guys to keep an eye on with the start of trade season opening, and I put Miles Bridges in there. And the reason I put Miles Bridges in there was twofold. There was a spot where, one, we know things didn't go real well contract talk-wise between him and the Hornets this past summer. He wanted more years and money. The Hornets said no, and he almost immediately signed the qualifying offer. They didn't get very far down that road at all. We all know the reasons why, because he had the domestic violence situation hanging over him. Since then, there's been another one of those that have come up, and that one has gone a little quiet. There was all this. It's being investigated. It's being looked into. We don't know if anything more is going to come at that at this point. So if you're a team going to trade for Miles Bridges, one, you have to be able to take the PR hit because it's going to come. You're going to get hammered by a lot of people that follow your team with that. Then the second piece is you have to feel pretty good that if whatever you give up, you're going to get an equal value in return. Either he pushes you over the top this season to whatever your goals are, whether that be get into the playoffs, compete for the finals, win the finals. And then if he leaves, you're okay because you achieved your goal that way. Or you feel pretty good about, hey, we feel good. He's put this stuff behind him. He is working actively towards being a better person. And we feel good about re-signing him. That's a lot of questions to be answered. The main reason I put him in the list is because it's very clear him and the Hornets are not really on the same page anymore. So we're going to see, if something happens. I will say this about Miles Bridges, players like Miles Bridges. NBA teams' morals are about down here off camera, somewhere near the floor when it comes to, can this guy help us win? It's just the way it works in the league. The Lakers in particular, I don't know, maybe. I mean, there's the Clutch Sports connection, so that's always a thing. But I don't know. I feel like I don't know that that's what the Lakers need. Quite honestly, I don't know that they need another 3-4 type forward that can't play the 5 at all. I feel like they've got those guys, plenty of them, to get by with right now. So I don't think that's a move I would make if I was the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, Bridges, it's only been 12 games that he's played, but he's basically stepped after sitting out last year. He's basically jumped right back into what he was doing in terms of his production. 20 points per game, 7 boards, 3 assists, 1.4 steals per game, shooting well from 3, 38% from deep if you round up, 50% from the field. He's doing what he does. Obviously there's a lot more than just what he does on the court for teams to consider if they're going to try to make that kind of a move. John also asked about where the Lakers get a big from. That's something we've talked a lot about with Lakers Nation, the potentially needing a true big to put with Anthony Davis. So I thought maybe we would just talk about kind of the big market in general. Because the Lakers certainly aren't the only team that could use a center. What bigs do you think are out there that are available on the market? And does it really start with Nikola Vucevic?
Yeah, I mean, it does. The problem is for Vuce, you got to match a pretty good size number if you were the Lakers for him. So I'm not sure they would go that direction, but just in general, I mean, I imagine the Bulls would be okay with maybe trading him, but I think that, and I apologize, they're out. This is why we don't do the show at this time. They're cutting our grass right now.
I can't even hear it. You're good.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, with Vuce, that falls into that whole, hey, we want to see what our team looks like kind of conversation of there. I think bigs that'll definitely probably be available. Hey, right now, I know this question came out of a specific Lakers direction. It'll make people probably shudder, but I would imagine Andre Drummond would be available. I'm on the trade market. Kelly Olynyk is said to be very available. Kelly Olynyk's still a good, helpful player. I think that could help a lot of teams. Guys like Mike Muscala, definitely out there. I think there could be a world where like Daniel Gafford becomes available from the Wizards. Maybe if you wanted to go a little bit more expensive in the Hawks, look to pivot. Maybe Clint Capella could be out there, and somebody that teams could go get. The one thing I know teams always feel confident in, if they need to go get a big, they'll get one somewhere. Because there's always some guy who makes around the minimum or slightly more that will become available, and their teams always feel good about their opportunity to acquire a guy like that.
What do the Pelicans do? Now, I'm not. This is not Lakers related here, but what are the Pelicans going to do with Jonas Valanciunas? That was a big a medium-sized topic of discussion over the summer about him wanting an extension. Played well in the FIBA World Cup. Where do they stand with him?
Yeah, I mean, they need him. They don't have another real center on the roster right now. The only other one is Cody Zeller, because their small ball option is Larry Nance, and he's hurt. They are very reluctant to put Zion in that spot because they don't have any defense when they do that. Valanciunas is playing pretty well. He's kind of doing what he's always done, right? He's never been that kind of guy. So as far as a superstar level, he just is good, solid, productive center. So my guess is they just keep him and kind of stick with him and see where everything goes, because they're a I'm not going to say a great team, but they're a good team right now, right? They're in the mix to be a team that's fighting for a top 6 spot and right around that playoff play-in line. So I think they probably just keep him.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably what they do. But on an expiring contract, I'm curious to see where he ultimately winds up, and if a deal comes along, potentially, maybe not just for him, but as part of a bigger package, he's just a decent sized salary at, I believe, 16 million or so off the top of my head, that could wind up being in the mix for something to go on. Bernie said, I expected OKC to be good. The Orlando Magic have been a surprise. Glad to see a young team built from the draft. What's been your biggest surprise so far?
Yeah, Orlando's up there for sure. Didn't really expect them to play quite at this level. I thought I had them as a team that I actually believe at the end, I can double check here. I think I picked them to make the top 6 in the end. I did not. That's actually off. I had them as a play-in tournament team. Okay. So, I mean, I thought they'd be okay. I just didn't know, how far they would get. So but they're really have come together well. They play really hard and they defend. And if you do those two things, you're going to be in just about every single game, each year. So outside of them, Houston is a major surprise.
Yes.
At 12-9, they are playing unbelievable defensive basketball, and they get after it so hard each night. And if you don't play hard, you don't play. Ime Udoka pulls them right off the floor, and you sit. And if you haven't watched, check out Tari Eason, because he has been awesome lately. Not just good, but awesome. His last handful of games, he has played unbelievable. And that's a super crowded group of forwards there in Houston. And I do wonder if that's going to be a position where eventually they can deal from strength, but they have been so good.
Keith, you're talking about some positive surprises, the Orlando Magic. You talk about the Houston Rockets. Let me bring some negativity, because there can't be a positive without a negative, because there's only so many spots. In order for somebody to rise, somebody else has to fall. What about the Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns, currently sitting at 10th and 11th in the Western Conference? Now, that doesn't mean they're out of it, but to see the Warriors in particular right now with a losing record, they're 10-14 on the season, 8.5 games back of first place. That's been, I think, a big surprise this season. And now they've got more Draymond stuff. By the way, we haven't talked about that. Indefinite suspension for Draymond Green. Who knows what direction that's going to go? I think the Suns, you get it, because they've had so many injuries and things they've been dealing with. The Warriors, their fall. Both of these teams being right now essentially on the outside looking in, that's been a surprise this season. Throw the Memphis Grizzlies in there as well, but of course that's all injury and suspension related. But for the Warriors in particular to be sitting where they are, I definitely wouldn't have predicted that heading into the season.
Yeah, and we'll use it's still early qualifiers and everything. 100%. But in the case of the Suns, they're 10th in the West, and they're only 3 games out of second. So I'm not worried at all about the Suns. I think they'll get there. I think they'll be fine. But this was the one thing we said. They may not be the juggernaut some people were talking about over the summertime because of the injuries. We knew these guys were a good bet to miss time. I think, what did I originally set it at 50 games that the 3 of them might all play together? And now I think I've lowered that down to like 30 at this point, just because we're already under 60. If they all played every game from here on out, it'd be 59 games or something like that they could play. We know that's not going to happen. So the Warriors, though, 100% with them. Just Klay Thompson, I know he played well last night, but just hasn't been Klay Thompson this year. And then the Draymond stuff that's got them all kind of out of sorts, because we'll talk about what he did and got himself suspended, but he is so important to them as setting a tone defensively, as a ball mover, a screener on offense, just kind of the way he drives that team. It's really tough. But the indefinite suspension now, who knows, how long it's going to be. I was talking to people about it just to get a sense of, like, we thinking 10 games, or we thinking 15 or 20. And the only answer I got back consistently from most people was he's not going to be back until sometime after the new year, and probably pretty well after that.
Yeah, it's going to be a while for him to get back. And I mean, technically with indefinite, it's just not defined. Like, he could be back in 2 games if the NBA really wanted him to, but obviously that's not the direction this is going to go. I think this is the right call for the NBA to keep him out and figure out what's really going on. He's had some comments recently that are questionable, or you kind of wonder what's really happening, what's going through his head in these moments. But they've got to get this fixed. They've got to get this solved. And so I think this is the right response for the NBA. Now, it's not good for the Warriors, who again right now are on the outside looking in. And it's not like they're out of it. It's still super early, and this is a team obviously you can't count out. They've got such a history of success. But we do need to watch, like, if this slide continues for another, say, month, it might be time to start worrying a bit in Golden State for where they're ultimately going to wind up. Now, again, all they really need to just, even if they have to be in the play-in, just get in the mix, and they've got a shot. They've got a history of success, So there's that element to it, but still, they have slid farther than I think anybody would have predicted.
At the bottom of the chat, Mark Angel Melendez's question. We'll bring it up after we get off of this discussion, because I do want to talk about that. He asked a good question about a player I have been on record as not being a fan of. Okay. So we'll get to it in a minute. With the Warriors, with Draymond Green, this is Sorry, the dog's losing his mind at the people cutting the grass.
It's all right. My cat is at the door right now too, going nuts, wanting to come in, and I'm like, no. He comes in and knocks stuff over and everything. It's the worst.
I love it. So what's with Draymond? This is my guess is this is the NBA basically saying, go away and figure this out because we're down to last chances here. There's anything like this happens again, you're gone for a while. And my guess is if it was this year, it would be see you later for the rest of the season. And then we'll talk in the summertime. And why they leave it indefinite is they don't want to say 5 games in again, goes away, comes back 5 games, and then a month later he hits somebody else, and now we're right back there. Right. So I think with the position of Draymond Green, I want to believe Draymond Green with him saying he wants to get help and he knows he needs to get help. I want to believe that. I think we're in a spot though where you got to prove it to me, right? I can't just buy in that that's where you're at. Like you have to prove that. And not only that's obviously the way the Warriors feel, the NBA feels, the NBPA feels, Clutch feels, everybody involved, including hopefully Draymond himself, knows it's time to go get yourself some help. And I thought Stephen Curry's comments after last night's game were really kind of pointed where he said, it's not that I need to know, about what he did. I just need to know the how and the why. Like, how did we get here and why are you doing this? Yeah. And basically then he went on to say, like, that's like his brother, right? And he's been with him for so long and how important he is to not just the way the team plays, but just in the locker room and how much he means to him. And basically you could tell it was painful for him that he was like, he needs to get help. Like we need him to get help and to be a better person. So hopefully, Draymond goes away, takes however long he needs and comes back. But it is, we'll see, man. It's one of those things where, we'll believe it but for me, I'll believe it when I see it.
I thought Woj brought up a good point on, I don't remember what show it was. It was ESPN programming of some kind. I don't recall exactly what show it was, but he brought up that, the people that would be in the decision-making process in terms of what an indefinite suspension looks like, it's all in terms of the NBPA, in terms of Joe Dumars in the league office. It's all people who like Draymond has known for large parts of his life. And so this isn't a group of people that would be anti-Draymond or trying to stick it to Draymond in any way. Like there's general concern and a general push to try to, or genuine push to try to really come to a solution here and figure out what is really going on. They talked about Andre Iguodala with the NBPA, talked about Joe Dumars, talked about all these guys that have been involved that have either played with him or have known him since he was young and all this. And these are all the people that were in the decision-making process to make this an indefinite suspension. So this is not being done to in any way try to harm the Warriors. And this is about figuring out what's going on with Draymond and then go from there.
100%. And here's my thing. And a lot of people in the chat are saying he'll never change. And I can't live my life that way in all facets that people can't get better. Because if that's the approach you take, I just worry where we'd be as a world if people can't improve, the type of people they are. That said, he deserves this. Like he did these things to land himself in this spot. He is in no way the victim. He is in no way owed any kind of leeway here, any benefit of the doubt. Go away, really try to figure it out, and let's see, when you come back, you have to prove it, and it is going to have to be prove it for years, whatever years you have left around the NBA. It's because otherwise it's always going to kind of be in the back of our mind. I hope 4, 5 years, 6 years from now, whatever, our conversation is coming back and saying, you know what, he really did. He came back a better person, and this kind of nonsense never happened again. And the other thing is too, he has to also know when he gets back, guys are going to be trying to provoke this stuff from him. They're going to be doing things to try to get him to act out and do this stuff because that's how this always works. I mean, Rasheed Wallace owned it for years of I'd be getting heated and I'd have guys leaning over to me saying, yeah, man, let him know. I fouled you. Tell the ref. Like, you need to let him know. And he's like, and too often they baited me into it. He's like, I'd let opponents get under my skin. And that's going to happen here. So my whole thing with Draymond Green is I have to. It's just a life thing for me. Is I have to believe he can be better because I can't wake up every day believing bad people are bad people and can never improve. I just have to believe that because otherwise, the world gets to be too scary of a place. People can't improve. So I hope he improves, and I hope that's where he gets. But no, I don't necessarily expect it, and I don't also by any means think he's owed any benefit of the doubt. He did
Yeah.
these things. Take your punishment, act on it, and it better not be he's back in a week and a half because that's clearly you're not going to learn anything in that short of amount of time.
No, obviously 5 games didn't do anything. All the previous situations didn't do anything. So this has obviously got to be a big step up. All right, Jeremy said, "Happy front office Friday. Happy front office Friday indeed. If the Jazz trade Lowry, what team would make the most sense? 2 off the top of my head are the Thunder and the Pacers. Yeah, I mean the
two
the
good
Thunder.
ones.
Whoever the Thunder want, they've got. We've talked about the quality of the picks, but they've got the picks to go get themselves in the conversation. So if the Thunder decide it's Lowry,
Danny Ainge, Sam Presti, it'd be like that's like draft pick explosion happening,
right?
Like, I mean, that might just we might all wake up in a different multiverse if those two come together on a trade where there might be 55 draft picks involved.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine trying to sort through that and all the protections and everything like that? I mean, that trade phone call would set a record.
Better start it tomorrow, or it might not end in time for the trade deadline. Yeah, and the Pacers, great one too. The thing with Markkanen, he's on, even though he's an all-star last year, he's on a very, very tradable contract. He doesn't make that much money. It's like 15 million or so. For this season. So that's very easy. And the Pacers, they still have 9 million in cap space. Well, a little less because one of the things we haven't talked about, they're re-signing James Johnson, which I think was the Pacers. We can't get punked and thrown around like we did against the Bucks. We need somebody who, if things get a little sideways with physicality, we need to get him back on the floor.
Who's a legitimate like martial artist.
Yeah, exactly.
James Johnson.
Yeah.
That's
Johnson
what you're
is
getting
one of the few guys. Most guys in the league are like, yeah, you don't actually want to mess with him. Like there's a lot of tough guys in the league. And for those only listening, I put that in quotes. James Johnson is not one of them. Like he's somebody that's pretty well known. You stay away from him, or to try to stay on his good side at least. So I think, those would be 2 great fits for Lauri Markkanen. Really, really good fits.
Yeah, especially like him as if he is available, him going to a team that's already kind of up and coming. And I think both the Thunder and the Pacers make a lot of sense because this would be not just a quick fix. Hey, let's grab a veteran player who can maybe give us a boost for a couple of years. You're adding a guy who maybe could be part of your team for the next 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is. 5 years in today's NBA is an absolute lifetime, but could be part of your team for the foreseeable future. So I like those destinations for him. And those are teams who, maybe they have some incentive at this point. Both teams kind of in similar situations in their respective conferences.
Yeah. I mean, those, I don't know that I could have came up with 2 better fits for Lauri Markkanen. Bonhito asks, does the NBA have a ref problem? Yeah. Especially right now. Too many ejections of good players. That said, you can't say whatever you want to a ref. Like,
no.
You just can't. Like, it's just, and that's a known thing. And the players know that too. They know what the magic words are that are going to get you tossed. That said, the refs they're going to that far too quickly. Like, you gotta, with this stuff and the hanging on the rim technicals, just
those drive me crazy.
Who cares? Like, this is not the 1980s and 90s where, guys were breaking backboards and Shaq was tearing down the entire, basket structure.
The whole system. Yeah.
Like, that doesn't happen anymore. Like, it's, fine. If you want to make it a rule, guy hangs on a rim and breaks a backboard, it's an automatic ejection. Fine. Then go ahead. Go nuts because it's just not going to happen. But yeah, it's, no,
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Keith, we just got a Woj bomb here. Cleveland Cavaliers center Evan Mobley will undergo arthroscopic surgery on his left knee and is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, so this is
unbelievable.
Yeah, that's all right. So let's take a look. Cavs are 13 and 12 and 9th in the East right now. Now, none of the teams behind them are teams you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna catch them. But that makes it tough to start to see if the Cavs even going to get into the top 6, right? They're only a game out of it right now, but how long is Mobley out for? 6 to 8 weeks?
6 to 8 weeks.
And Garland's going to miss several weeks. So that's brutal. Just brutal.
Man. I mean, those are your 2 of your top guys that you're building around for the future. Now, what do the Cavs do? Do you just try to tread water long enough to maybe make the play in and then be a factor come the postseason? Or do they, I mean, like what happens with Donovan Mitchell now, who's got a player op? He has next year could be his last year under contract. Then he has a player option after that. Does this push them to maybe move in another direction for this season and kind of regroup over the summer? Or do you think they just kind of hang in there, tread water as long as possible, and then see what they can do when they get their guys back?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for now you just play it out, right? You see, all right, what can we do, right? We've still got Jared Allen, we still got Donovan Mitchell, we've got Karis LeVert, we've got good role players. Can one or two of them step up and take on a bigger role? Is that where it is? I would expect at the very least they have an open roster spot. So I would expect to see somebody signed and brought up. I'm not by any means suggesting he's ready to go in the NBA, but Amani Bates has been playing really well in the G League. He's one of their two-way players. So maybe you kind of get him, some more minutes. See if he, is there something that can translate through to the NBA level with what he's doing. So I wouldn't mind, giving that a shot. And then, maybe you start looking, is there a trade? Is there a trade that makes sense to be better this year? Right. Not necessarily a trade of I got to go trade Donovan Mitchell away. Here's the other challenge for the Cavs, though. They're only $750K under the luxury tax. So you're in a spot where adding like much salary, that gets just really messy. So this just sucks. Like there's no other way to put it. Like this just sucks.
Man, that it's frustrating. Especially Evan Mobley is one of the bright young players in this league. Same thing with Darius Garland, both of them now out. That brutal. I mean, Keith, this is Front Office Friday. We're supposed to be celebrating the coming of the weekend, and we start the show with this, and now we get this part of the way through too with the Darius Garland news and then the Evan Mobley news. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah, what is this? What show are we doing here? This is not what we do on this show.
No.
I'm going to pull it up. All right, we'll be positive Cavs here for a minute. Amani Bates in the G League in 9 games. 24.3 points per game. He's shooting 46% from the field, 42% from 3 on 10 3-point attempts per game. 4.9 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.9 steals, and 1.1 blocks. So that's even up a little bit from the last time I checked on him. I'll see him here next week, maybe, if he's with the Cleveland Charge of the G League for the G League Showcase here in Orlando next week. But I'm thinking he might not be here. He might be up with the big team and actually playing. So that's the high-level production, especially the shooting percentages. That's stuff that should get you fired up if you're a Cavs fan, that, hey, maybe this guy's ready to go and can help a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully that can be the silver lining here to a bad situation for Cleveland.
Somebody asked, who claims Bates? Nobody. He's signed. He's signed to the Cavs on a 2-way contract, so the Cavs have him. That's great, Bape. You're wrong. The G League stats don't mean nothing. There are certain ones that do mean a lot. There are shooting percentages are meaningful. Rebounding is a stat that tends to translate no matter what league they're in. So we'll say we'll see where it goes.
This one, who's the most likely to make a trade by the trade deadline? Portland, the Knicks, OKC, or Miami?
I'd say probably Portland, just because they're still in rebuilding mode. I would say they could, do something. OKC is always a good bet because they just always do stuff. So the Knicks, it feels like the Knicks have got to do something with that guard wing rotation. There's just too many guys and not enough minutes. And we've already heard Quentin Grimes and Josh Hart gripe about their role a little bit. Emmanuel quickly did not seem very happy to be coming off the bench and playing so little his last time out. That didn't seem like a thing. And then Miami, I don't know what the Heat are going to do there. It's not that they're fully out of tradable assets, but he's we'll see where they want to go this year.
I do think Portland is an interesting. Jeremy Grant Maybe somebody to keep an eye on. Obviously, a big contract.
Oh,
So
I
you got to
said
be
I was
convinced.
going to put that in the thing. I wrote about him too. I added him in
Oh, did you?
the trade piece. Yeah. So let me do that in the YouTube channel right now. So I don't
Okay.
forget.
MS Highlights, who, by the way, was on. We did a on the Lakers Nation YouTube channel. We did a members only live show last night, and he was on, and we let people come on the stage with us for those. And he was on. It's 5:30 in the morning where he lives when we did the show last night, and he was up hanging out to watch the show. It was a good time. But he said, "Keep up the good work. Love your show. Front Office Friday." Thank you, man. Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
in.
we appreciate that. I assume whatever currency BAM is, that translates like $1 million to every $1 US. So we're rich now. We're
there we
loaded.
go.
So,
There we
yeah,
go.
perfect.
All right.
That's a good way to end the
That's a
Friday.
real Front Office Friday.
One quick thing. What did somebody say? Is Scoot on bust watch? No, I don't think so. Point guards take a while. Point guards and centers, the extremes, they take a while. It's that those guys could take a while to figure it out and learn how to play. Scoot was really good last night against Utah. He's finally starting to put together consistent good games in a row. So very, I'm still super high on Scoot Henderson. I think he's going to be a good player.
Keith, last thing that I want to finish with here. You and I were talking the other day, and you said on our last show, you forgot you wanted to talk about Bismack Biyombo and what it meant for the Ja Morant return. So I wanted to make sure we address that.
I forgot to answer the question I told you I wanted to answer about Cam Reddish.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
Find it. It's fine.
Okay.
But Cam Reddish, I have been out on Cam Reddish, as out as anybody could be, in part because I was super high on Cam Reddish coming in. I thought he was going to be really, really good. I thought Cam Reddish would have a Corey Brewer-like career in terms of like length and roll, but he'd be even better because I thought he'd be a better shooter and scorer than Corey Brewer. I was out on Cam Reddish for the Hawks, the Knicks, the Trailblazers. I said over the summertime, fine, the Lakers gave him a minimum. I don't really care. I don't think it's going to mean anything. He's been very good. I can admit, I don't hold to a guy stinks. Trevor knows better than anybody else. I want everybody to be really good.
Yeah.
That's when the league is at their best.
I love to be wrong when I'm down on a player.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me when I'm wrong if I don't think a guy's good. Cam he's playing well. He's really playing good defense right now. And that's, I think, what he's bought into. And maybe just took him landing with LeBron and the right team and the right guys. Play defense and run the floor like Corey Brewer. Just go. That's all you need to do, man. We'll find you. If you run the floor, we'll find you. If you play defense, we'll take care of you. And he's really done that. So I'm very happy with where Cam Reddish is at right now. And I think there are a handful of guys around the league, we won't get into them today, that I would look at it and say, start looking at Cam Reddish, and you can really this is what what you can do. If you find your right role and you buy in and go, you can be this too, instead of finding yourself out of the league or playing, in the G League and over in Europe or something like that. So I think it's a spot where, man, just get just find your role, right, and get after it. So I think he's going to be tough, man. He's finally figured it out. Bismack Biyombo. So why I wanted to talk about this is just an interesting thing and a thing to keep an eye on here with the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis loves Bismack Biyombo. They gave him a bigger than a minimum contract, but they signed him with the extra roster spot they got when they put Ja Morant on the suspended list. That came with an extra roster spot. Ja's got, I believe it's 3 games left that he's out. He also talked to the media today. I haven't seen it yet, so that's something we'll talk about next week probably, his comments. But when Ja Morant comes back, they lose that extra roster spot. It goes away. So the Grizzlies are going to have to do something. We've heard they've been exploring the trade market for some of their guys. What could it look like? Could they do an unbalanced trade? Jake Fisher reported if they can't find a trade, they're probably going to waive Kenneth Lofton Jr. so that they can keep Bismack Biyombo. But it's just something worth keeping an eye on, because it doesn't automatically have to be Biyombo that goes. That's why they could waive Lofton. They're just sitting at 16 players on standard contracts right now. And that's just kind of a unique thing with the suspended list. But as soon as Ja comes off and they're ready to activate him, they have to make a move. There's no waiting period. There's no adjustment period. As soon as his suspension is over, they have to make a roster move. So that's coming here in the next week.
Yeah. So that's going to be something we'll keep an eye on. for Memphis. Do they make a trade? And maybe that becomes our minor December trade that sometimes goes down.
Yeah,
wouldn't surprise. Yeah, if it's something like that.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Keith, it's been an eventful Friday, that's for sure.
Yeah, a lot happened today.
We had a lot going on during the show, but
this was like one of our off-season shows.
That's
where,
right.
Stuff is just bing, bing, bing.
I should have used our breaking news drop apparently, but it just felt so bad. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't fun news. So, but I do appreciate everybody for joining us on Front Office Friday. If you wouldn't mind, go over on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating and review. Make sure you subscribe to the show there as well. And of course, subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.